But on that note, let's go across to the Motilal Oswal's Wealth Creation Report event for a fireside chat with Raamdeo Agrawal, the co-founder of Motilal Oswal, and Sanjoy Bhattacharya.
He sent me Berkshire Hathaway physical annual report, one copy. I mean, I used to think I'm really smart and we understand the market. We have read all the balance sheets and we are so passionate about the market. But actually, we didn't have any frameworks. We didn't know. We were looking for ideas. We were excited about making money in the market, and we were making money. But we didn't know how to make money. And when we read Buffett, at least I read Buffett first time, I fell in love. It was love at first sight, and we started following him. But as we started reading more and more, we started doing wealth creation studies. Then we realized you have to also have a discipline of price. When I read Intelligent Investor in 2003, the book was bought much earlier, but I read it only in 2003. So then I realized you have to buy good companies at reasonable price. Then we kept on, talking about good companies in one way or other. Then somewhere I think 2011 or 12 study, this growth and quality and growth, that came up. So that, and we realized it was just accidental. With Srinath, we just found that if there is only quality, you don't make money. Because Buffett has made so many writers, I mean, like thousands of books are there, how to value quality. Now, if you have quality today, there is no value in the marketplace because there's so many books written. It has become more of a science than art. So only by having quality you cannot make money. It is fully priced. Now, how do you make money? And yet you don't want to buy low quality. And that's where the growth came in picture. And we started practicing from 2014 very aggressively. And we said quality, growth, and reasonable price. All three have to be right. Now, after this study, even the longevity of growth will be important because most of the guys, as we said, there are few situations, and we don't have to be early in growth situations. Because companies can grow 20 years, 30 years, and we can be very skeptical about next 2 years growth or 3 years growth. But mutual fund is such a wonderful vehicle where you can afford to go wrong. So in 20 situations, in 5 or 6 or even 10 situations, we are wrong about the growth, not about the quality. We are wrong about the growth and we have paid reasonable price. We may not do well. We may not beat the market in those 10 companies. But the 10 companies where my growth estimates turn out to be good, right, or if the growth comes ahead of my estimate, which really happens in half situations. Because downside is 1x and upside is 100x. So in that combination, we'll beat hands down. Let's see how this longevity of growth practice delivers results, because practicing will start from tomorrow.
Sanjoy, I'm very, very keen to hear your thoughts on putting this P right at the end of the whole analysis, and even sometimes ignoring it when you figure out that QGL is out there in abundance.
Actually, I think we should go back to your original question to Raamdeo, because I think he's been incredibly gracious in saying upfront that there is no investment salvation. Different methods work for different people. And I think this is profundity at its best. Many people get carried away with a method. It's not the method. It's the realization that you need to do what you understand best. And I think in his case, and he's truly unique in that sense, he understands this combination incredibly well. This combination of quality with growth and longevity. But I think the point you made, that I have seen this, I think, just as vividly as you have, that in the last 5-7 years, I think his belief, and even in his presentation, he spoke about hindsight P's, which I think is his reflection of the idea that being very sort of tightly focused on valuation is not worth very much. And I'm curious to hear from him, no person better than him, to explain how he came to that realization. And then I have one or two questions on that.
So actually, this payback period we are doing from, I think, Dhruv would remember better, but after internet came, so it must be about 2004 or 5. So we were trying to figure out that how much market discounts, how smart is the market in discounting. And there was one Canadian paper which was saying that markets typically at max, it sees the next 5 years. So if you are able to, if you can foresee the company's growth for next 5 years, and you can figure out with the compounding machine that you can buy for less than the next 5 years earnings, you are sitting on multi-bagger. In fact, I'm talking about this must be in 2001, because in 2003, when I bought Bharti at about 5,000 crores, I could see, I did the calculation that the company is going to make 28,000 crores in the next 5 years, and we are getting the stock at 5,000 crores. And actually the company made 32,000 crores. And you remember what happened. In 3 years, that 25 rupees stock went to 1,200 rupees. It was a 48, 50 bagger in next 3 years. So I think we started practicing this sometime in 2001-2, and this paper we can still find out from somewhere in terms of who that, I don't remember, probably I'll send it to you.
No, but Raamdeo, the interesting issue is, and again, very much present upfront in your study, today we live in a world of very low interest rates, especially not so much in India, but even in India, relative to our own history, but certainly in the United States. So if you apply the idea that you've just got to earn in excess of your weighted average cost of capital, and obviously the world's concept of riskiness today has changed. You can see how low the volatility indices have been for the last 5-7 years. Then virtually, very large numbers of people will earn more than their cost of capital. Sure. And growth has returned in the last 2-3 years again to the world. Yes. But in our country, certainly post-2014. Now, is this just a propitious time to be investing, the last 5 years, where you have this wonderful Goldilocks combination of low interest rate, stable political leadership, a return of economic growth, and so one can get away without being particularly disciplined on the valuation? Because we are creating records every day as we go along in terms of how sort of mind-boggling some of the valuation numbers are. And the enthusiasm that people have to buy those stocks at these prices. That's I think, the icing on the cake.
I would say macro has never been our strength, and we never understood it properly. I don't know how these GDP numbers are calculated. It's an honest admission. So what I'm saying is macro has never been guide to our stock selection. We went by our QGLP process. We'll stick to that. We'll not bother too much about what is the cost of capital, what is the WACC, and all these kind of jargon I don't want to get into. You have been taught in your school. I have not been taught in my school. So you are good at that. I'm very bad at that.
No. It's what your guru said. It's what Buffett said. That low interest rates are the ultimate tailwind to equity markets. Yes. We now are at a stage where certainly in the largest economy in the world, that is about to turn.
Yes.
Does that have implications for us sitting in India?
Yes. I mean, these things are global practices, will come back to India. Like, I think we are undermining the tax rate cut in US from 35 to 20. I still can't believe it has happened in US in one stroke of pen, that they brought it down from 30, marginal tax rate has been brought down to 20%. I think there will be competitive tax reduction all over the world. Europe will start, Far East will do it, and then eventually we have to do it. Maybe we might be a little late. Actually, we were the first to think about it. Arun Jaitley, in 3 years back, he said we want to go down from 30% to 27 or 25%. But he didn't implement. These guys, they talked about it 2 months back, and they have executed it. So I think this competitive tax reduction has I have seen, if you just keep chasing the earnings and earnings growth and quality of earnings, I think that is the best guidance to stock picking. Now, these global macros can guide you. At sometimes you become insightful about that also. Like low interest rate, like Buffett said, if interest rate in next 5, 7, 10 years goes back to about 3% from current 2.5%, then stocks are still very attractive. But if you think the interest rate can go to 4% or 4.5%, 5%, then probably you are paying too high for the future profits, future stock market situations. So who knows? In 81, 82, when the risk-free was 16, 17%, and that came down to literally 0 or 1%. I mean, these kind of trajectories are, in macroeconomics, it is very difficult to figure out. And we are living very simple life, and our money is very expensive. And what works for us, I have seen one thing, what works for me is that, and I stick to that, that is, if the company is not making money, I never buy the company. I will never buy.
That is absolutely right. I mean, if the company is not highly profitable, there's no
Yeah.
point in owning the company. But what I'm a little confused about, and I was looking again at the presentation,
Yeah.
if you look at all the, the ones which have done really well, none of them gives you the feeling that if the valuations were to become slightly less, what shall I say, full, that in the next 5 or 10 years, that you would earn the kinds of returns you'd be happy with. Because if you look at the gains that stocks make, these multi-baggers, it comes from 3 things. The earnings growth, the PE growth, right? These are essentially the 2 biggest, and you can make some money depending on dividend distribution or, the reduction in the number of shares, so you can engineer some amount of growth from that, which is very popular in the US actually, much less so in our country. But more fundamentally, earnings growth, I don't think can go beyond the level. So if PEs are already at a pretty high level today, and we think that PEs are mean reverting, or the market is mean reverting, financial markets are mean reverting, then what do you see for the next 5 or 7 or 10 years?
Yeah, see, again, it is company specific. I would not like to buy a 30% growth company if I think that in next 5 years the company is going to grow, in my estimate, at 30%, and the P multiple today is 80. Definitely, it is not going to enter my portfolio. So let the company do well and the investor not do well. I don't want to be in that bucket. I want to see clearly my earnings growth and current price we are paying has to have some reasonableness and some connection. And that's why we have only 15-20 companies. We have to find those companies where you have advantage of understanding of the valuation.
So is 1:1 roughly, would you say? If your earnings growth and your valuation in terms of those earnings are roughly balanced, let's say a PE of 30 for growth of 25-30, that sort of makes you feel that you're on safe ground.
If the quality of earning is very good, I'm pretty comfortable buying, and longevity earnings growth. If I can see next 10 years growing at 30% and it is 30p, I will happily go and buy 10% of the portfolio.
So that's, I think, in a very long time we managed to get the answer to what he said.
Yeah.
To what you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Sanjoy, there was a moat and growth matrix that he presented also in the presentation. And so moats are a necessary precondition to preserve capital, and growth is a necessary precondition to earn excess returns. But you have just growth and not moats, right? That could create growth traps. And
which you spoke about.
Yeah. And if you have moats but no growth, it could create underperformance.
Then you're in trouble.
Yeah. What has been your experience with these traps, and how do you avoid them?
With what? The growth traps?
Either of them.
So I've never had a problem with the quality traps because I'm a miser. So I've never had that problem. I mean, I haven't ever owned these companies, had the good fortune to own these companies because I can't bring myself to pay these wonderful multiples. So the quality traps I have happily missed. But I've been stuck in a lot of companies where there haven't been enduring periods of competitive advantage. In other words, it gets into trouble after a while. In fact, some of the best companies on that list actually have seen a shrinking of their moat over time, and the damage that it has done to those companies is incredible. So you take Infosys. It's a wonderful illustration of a company where at some point their competitive advantage began to shrink rapidly, and the growth also slowed down. And, obviously when you do these studies, you present long-term results. But if you look at Infosys from 2000 to 2008, and you add back dividends, how much do you think you earned as an investor?
You have made about 20% still.
3.5%.
But that is on the absolute peak. You're talking about that 1 lakh crore.
That's where I think it came to an end. I mean,
Okay.
the idea that you can buy stocks at 100 PE and 100% growth is obviously not sustainable. In 2000, people thought it was sustainable. But that's why I think mean reversion is such an important concept in financial markets, both on the growth side and on the valuation side. And a lot of these are very dangerous. And, today was a day of great joy for me, personally, because I put a large number of my shares in Infosys into the buyback, praying to God that somehow they'll be bought. So you can imagine, I mean, supposedly blue chip company, all of what we spoke about, and yet you can have these kinds of problems. So the value traps are really deadly. So the disappearing moat, if you can't identify that, then I think you're in serious trouble. I mean, Mr. Buffett himself and Coca-Cola. It's a wonderful illustration of how one of the world's smartest guys can get massacred if you don't see change coming. And it's not that easy. It's very easy on a presentation to say, I got it right. He didn't see it coming in newspapers, the internet.
But here, the cap is continuing, but gap is gone.
Where?
In Coke or at least in Infosys, where the competitive advantage period is still on. They're hugely profitable on their invested capital,
right.
and they're growing at 5-7%. The cap, but then growth is not there. The earlier 30, 40, 50% growth which was there.
So I would say this as my submission to what the work you've done. I think, and Navin, I think this is the essence of it. You've also got to look at delta.
Yep.
That is the rate of change in the growth and the rate of change in the strength of the moat. That is the real acid test of successful long-term investing. It's not the absolute moat, neither is it the absolute growth.
Yep.
It is about the rate of change, delta, in both of those, and how that relates to how the business is being valued.
Raamdeo ji, one of the important ingredients of a competitive advantage period is a sound corporate strategy. And some of the sources of a sound corporate strategy could be cost, low cost, focus, or differentiation, or whatever. You've run strategy for this group, right, forever, rather successfully. So, and in investing, when you apply it, what has really worked for you? What is a sound corporate strategy across your own portfolio? What is the commonality of that corporate strategy that you've seen? Is it cost oftentimes? Is it differentiation? Is it focus? What has worked for you?
It is a differentiation and growth. See, growth is always the element which has worked, but the companies which are differentiated on whatever basis, like now I would say, because low cost can always be, there can be always a warrior who will come and say that I will produce even 10 rupees cheaper than this. It's much more doable. But differentiated companies are very tough to beat, like say an ITC. Now how do you beat this mode of differentiation of ITC? Or for that matter, even Titan. Titan is not the lowest cost jewelry producer. I believe it is one of the more expensive ones. If you go by the making charges, what they charge for per gram of gold, it is much higher than the conventional jewelry makers give you. But the differentiated, the brand equity they have, the design capability they have, and the trust the brand brings, those are very unique things. And in this large industry, they can, I mean, the industry itself might be growing slow, but the share gain, market share gain from 1 or 2% to like even 5-10%. Because in some of the countries, these jewelry companies can be very, very large. I went to Brazil, and in Brazil there are only 2 jewelry companies. They send you
that was Sanjoy, Bhattacharya and Raamdeo Agrawal at the Motilal Oswal Wealth Creation Study event, where they're talking about how to invest in the markets and how to select the right stock. But with that, it is a wrap on this edition of Reporter's Diary. Many thanks for watching, but stay tuned to CNBC TV18. Indianomics is coming up next.